All right, y'all. It looks like we're live. Everybody, I want you to let me know if you can hear and see us. Let me know where you're watching from, where you're listening from. I feel like this necklace is going to keep jiggling and causing a distraction. So let me just take care of that right now. I just heard it. This is going to be a really interesting conversation. We definitely have some people that were already like, oh, this is going to be like a tea sipping type of conversation because this has been on the radar for a minute. All right. Adrienne says that loud and clear. She can hear and see us. I appreciate you. And I'm going to be reaching out to you. Actually, Adrienne's going to be on one of these future lives that we have going forward. But we're going to be talking about traveling during COVID, right? And I'm going to get into an introduction of our lovely panelists from literally all around the world. We have Atlanta, we have Canada, we have Puerto Rico in the house right now. But I want to start off with why I think this conversation is needed. So it's been a little bit testy in the Nomadness tribe over the last couple of weeks when it comes to this, because I feel like this is a polarizing conversation. What I literally said to myself when I was brainstorming this, I said, having the conversation about traveling during COVID reminds me of having the conversation with your children about having sex. Right. And I said, the reason why is because it's like, okay, are you going to like try to preach abstinence and act like they're not doing it? Or are you going to give them the resources and the tools and the conversation and let them make the best decision for themselves, but know that they're protected no matter what they do, right? And so here I am, Mama Bear of Nomadness, and I'm just like, of course, we're gonna have to have the conversation because it comes up. I feel like at least weekly, if not, more than weekly, we have people that come into the tribe and are posting about how like they're going somewhere or they are somewhere. And, you have the people that are down for the cause, and then you have the people that are just like, can you please sit down? We're trying to get this thing under control. So what's up? So tonight is about bringing people together who have taken the plunge. What I will say is that this conversation does not represent us, Nomadness. Even the people on this panel is saying, definitely you should go out and go travel. This is something that you all have to decide for on your own, but we're going to deep dive into people that have done it, what their experiences were like, the good, bad, the ugly, and the beautiful for the experiences. And I say that because I had to check myself, y'all. I'm gonna be completely honest with you. I had to check myself because I've been pretty damn diligent on shutdown and COVID, right? Like I've been in the crib. I haven't traveled anywhere. I was in India when it started with 45 Nomadness members on a Nomadness trip. So I know what it was like to get everybody's asses like back home and the drama that came with as a, group and trip organizer. And so with that, it was like, stay in the house. That's it. Point blank, period. And then there was one post that I saw from somebody where it's somebody that I know that something traumatic had happened in their home. And they were like, look, I've got to get out of here. And I don't care if I have to quarantine 14 days in somebody's hotel on the beach. I would rather be there than be home. And the reason why that post checked me was because I realized that home is not safe for everybody. Home is not, being cooped up is not a safe mental space for everybody. And for people who are avid travelers, people watching, everybody that's on this call, it plays a very tangible and significant role in our lives and also in our mental health. And it was in that moment that I was like, damn, and I'm obviously going through ups and downs motions, making decisions as well. But it was that moment that I realized we needed to have this conversation, and it made me understand both sides better and check myself. And I think that's part of what needs to happen a little bit in the discourse that we're having now. So with that being said, and my entryway into this conversation, I'm going to introduce our panelists for tonight. I'm going to start with Alex Bachdorf. She's the CEO of the Women's Entrepreneurial Incubator, Get Shit Done. Also a very good friend of mine who is in Puerto Rico right now. But the last time I saw her, she lived in Brooklyn. So we don't know. We have no idea. And then next up, we have Cassie Isabella, one of the founders of the Roaming Republic. and she's absolutely amazing. If you were at Audacity Memphis, she was an attendee, she was a speaker, and it's amazing to see your face again. And she's been bopping around all over the place. If you follow her social media, like Croatia, you done busted your lip up and had to like go to the hospital in Croatia. And I was like, am I gonna have to like, are we gonna have to like do like a try bat signal to go find her ass and bring her back home, please? Someone. I was like, Clayton left and now everybody's just discombobulated. Like, what's going on? Like, and last but not least, we have Cedric Wood of Ced Trippin', who I'm gonna be honest with you, Ced, I started following you this year. And I know you and I have been chit-chatting on the back end and in each other's DMs and all this other stuff, but you're super dope. And I really appreciate the energy. I appreciate the information that you've been giving out. I also appreciate your candor. I feel like you're somebody who's like, yeah, I'm out here and I'm just going to own it. That's just what it is.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm with it. So let's start with the first question that I have is pretty much where are you based? Like, where is home for you and where are you right now? Because this plays into some future questions. So I'm going to start with you.
Oh, with me?
Yeah, you.
Yeah. It was like, it went out a little bit. Sorry. So I have a very unique situation. I'm formally based in Brooklyn. Had a situation with some bullshit roommate stuff because of COVID. And I was just like, look, I'm not trying to find another roommate in COVID. Like, this is, so many people are leaving New York right now. And I'm not one of those people that's like, I'm out of New York. Like, New York's always home for me. Like, that's not the thing. But I understand for the people that are like, I can't justify, like, before we got on, we were talking about, like, for me, I'm like, I can't justify paying the premium I'm willing to pay for New York without my amenities. Otherwise, I'm looking at like Boo Boo the Fool out in these streets. I'm not doing that. Yeah. So I put my stuff in storage, and then I have family in Seattle. I've been hanging out there. But then it was just got to a point for me where I'm like, for my own, going back to what Avita said earlier, for my own sanity, I'm like, let's explore what it looks like if I go to these places. Mind you, when COVID started, I was in Montserrat, which is a small island next to Antigua. And right when COVID hit, they were like, we need to get all you UK Americans out because you brought this crap here. I had family hitting me up, like, this is the middle of March, saying, get back here. They don't know if they're going to close the borders. I was supposed to go to Mexico right after that. I didn't have to go at the reroute. I spent so much time on the phone with American Airlines. I had like probably $100 bill extra on my actual bill from T-Mobile, just trying to get back and organize. And so I had experienced what it was like traveling domestically and internationally in the beginning. And then also traveling domestically because I had to go back to New York, pack up my stuff, put it in storage because I'm like, I'm not renewing my lease right now. I'm not there because I went to Seattle originally to have space because I was cooped up in my New York apartment. And then I'm like, new lease. I'm like, I'm not there. Put it in storage. And I'm like, I actually felt safer on a plane in the airports than anywhere else. So I could see this fear from people, but because of forced circumstances, I had to get on flights regardless. Like, my lease was up. I had a week to pack up my stuff. So it was just like, I had to get on a flight, but to be real, I felt safer getting to an airport and going through all of that and being on the planes because of the different things that they put in place and precautions that I was like, this is safer than me going into a lot of places in the US or outside of here. And then that actually gave me the courage, or made me feel, not even courage, but made me feel secure to then be like, I'm comfortable going to other places. And then when I finally went, and we'll get to that later, I was like, the US ain't shit. Like, these places are safer. So here I am.
Right. Got you. In Puerto Rico, indefinitely. Ced, where are you based? Where's home and where are you now?
Well, I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do because I'm based in Atlanta and I'm in Atlanta right now. And
following the rules. He's like, y'all ain't coming after me.
Here, and actually, I like it. Even though I feel like Atlanta is not doing everything they should be doing as far as like ensuring that everyone wear a mask, and all this other stuff. I like it. I like living here because all the amenities in my building is open.
Mine are not.
Place, honey.
All the restaurants are open here. All the clubs are open here. I went to LA last weekend, and I could not wait to get back to Atlanta because they were still closing down early. No gyms are open in LA. So I like being here. But I traveled to a few places during COVID, and I enjoyed my experiences. I think we're going to talk about that later, right?
Yeah, but I'm interested because I know Alex broke this down. Where are some of the places that you've gone to during COVID as well?
I've been to Tulum before everybody.
You were the first one. I will give that to you. You were the first person. I was like, they're fucking up Tulum for me, guys. They really, really are.
Tulum in June, okay? I think everyone rushed there in July, but I was there in June.
You made everybody go.
I didn't have all on my timeline, but everyone is in Tulum right now. But actually, Tulum is one of my favorite places I ever visited before. I think just because of the it's a whole vibe, just because of the community and how everything gets set up. A lot of the hotels are on the beach, and the restaurants are on the beach in close proximity. And all the trees, it has that forest jungle look. It's one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. Outside of the beach situation with the seaweed.
Yeah.
I hit you up. I was like, watch out for the red tide. I was like, definitely ask them because it will ruin plans. The last time I was in Tulum was after Audacity Fest, the first one. I went with one of my homegirls, and it was kind of like my get out of here and like debrief and break down from everything that had happened with Audacity and just like get my mind together and relax. Mm-hmm. And it was dope. There is a vibe to Tulum, and she had been going there for years, she actually lived in Atlanta and moved to Mexico City. And so Mexico City is also one of my favorite places as well. Mexico is like popping, but I'm gonna shut up because the way that it took over, I was like, Tulum ain't never gonna be the same.
It would never be the
same. Nothing else whatsoever.
Like charging crazy prices for like Pablo Escobar mansion to get into.
It's different now. All the prices I quoted for everything.
It's like absurd.
Yeah.
Well, like, I'm sorry, but basically
they're capitalizing on there.
I mean, to be fair,
right?
Yeah, for real. I love this. Alana said all my amenities are open is the new bragging rights.
Right.
I was like,
I need
pretty much.
Especially if you live in one of these places, especially New York. I feel like this hits hard for us, where it's just like, I'm willing to pay this ridiculous price.
Yeah.
Just give me my amenities. Like, that's it. That's it.
I get it. Like I said, I'm the person that's like, I get it from both sides. So, all right, Cassie, I want to move over to you. And where are you based out of? And where have you been during COVID?
So I am based in Canada. I'm originally from Toronto, just moved to Ottawa. If anybody knows where that is, that's the capital of Canada.
Super cool.
I'm in Montreal right now, quarantining because Canada has had their borders closed since March. You're not allowed in or out unless you're Canadian or like have a valid reason to be in here or are married to somebody and can prove it. You literally have planes literally won't let you take off from the country to get into Canada unless you have proof that you are allowed to be in here. Like, it's serious. So you have to quarantine for 14 days when you come back. So I'm at my sister's house right now, quarantining for 14 days. I think it ends on Friday, I guess. And I have traveled since throughout the entire pandemic, honestly. From March, right before lockdowns ensued, hey girl, I went to London. So I spent 2 months in London, and then came back, quarantined, went back to London because they never closed their borders there at all during this entire time. And from London is when I've traveled through Europe. So I went to Croatia, to Italy, to Greece, Slovenia for a little bit. And we did like a camper van through Croatia, 4 of us in total, and then just road trip through down to Italy until we got to Greece, went back to London, back to Canada, quarantined again, and then went to Turkey last. That's where we went last. Yeah, and came back from Turkey.
Yeah.
Right. And now you're quarantining again. So I actually want to deep dive into your experience because you are different from everybody else on the call because you have a Canadian passport. Congratulations.
Little black girl who wants to be American so bad when she
All we got is
Yo, I'm out here literally trying to like point myself off to probably some Canadian man and be like, look, I'm trying to
like, we just like, can I just get married real quick? Like,
it's funny because
I'm trying to get married, but I will get married for a passport at the new place. Like,
it's funny because I've always felt left out of the Black travel world because there's not a lot of Black Canadians in the, like, it's very much more so Black Americans. But now I'm like, hey, here I am with my Canadian passport. I'm still traveling. So
yeah. So here's a question. What are, like, where can you guys go or can you not go? Like, is the world really open to us? Because I mean, literally, you can count on a little more than both hands how many places Americans can go to right now. What does it look like on your side of things with the Canadian passport? What's your access?
It's hard to say because, like, there's a lot of places that we're allowed into, but because most of the rest of the world clumps us with Americans, you can try to get to a country that you're technically allowed to go to on paper, but the agent might be like, oh, Canadian, this means American, so actually you're not allowed in. So when I went to Turkey, I went with my sister, and she was traveling from Turkey to Greece by herself with her Canadian passport. Greece is open to Canadians. They're on the list of allowed travelers, but Turkish people are not allowed into the EU. They're banned from the EU right now because they're open. Turkey is actually open.
They're open. Yeah.
Americans.
Yep.
So when my sister was trying to go to Greece, the agent actually didn't let her leave Turkey because they were like, you're not allowed to go to Turkey because you're not allowed to go to Greece because you're Canadian. And she was like, literally their website says Canadians are allowed. And they're like, nope, you're not allowed. Sorry. I just feel like it was because they looked at her as like an American, and because everybody thinks Americans are banned from everywhere, they're just like, no, actually, you're not allowed. And countries are actually getting fined if they're letting people into the country where they were allowed to have gone into. So if you come into Canada, an airline will get fined for letting somebody who wasn't allowed into Canada. So they're very strict on that. Same thing with Germany. They didn't let her into Germany because they were like, you have a Canadian passport, you're not allowed into there. She ended up having to like go through a whole loophole going to London and to finally get into Greece just because the country wasn't up to date on the procedures. So even though we're allowed into certain places, it's tricky because you actually never know if the agent has the information, if the country's up to date on their information, or if where you're actually traveling from will bar you from getting into the country. So there's
so many levels to it. But this goes into actually what my next question is for everybody. What did your research look like? Said you've been really good at literally, and I can tell. I was like, I know he's getting the same damn questions in his DMs because if he has to post this shit one more time,
I get the same questions. But I've been to Cabo, I've been to Tulum, and I tried to do Aruba, but that didn't work out.
Yeah.
And the reason why it worked out with Aruba, because I went to the airport. I flew out of Atlanta. I was connected in Miami. So I got to Miami. Then they told me I didn't have the authorization to go to Aruba. So it was my fault because I just got back from Cabo the week before, and I work every other week. So I work 80 hours every other week. I actually, I'm a pharmacist at a hospital here in Atlanta.
Yeah, you work in the medical industry, which I also think is interesting.
Yeah, to keep my license up and going, I remain working. So I was tired. So I didn't read over the forms right. I thought we could get tested there in Aruba's airport, but apparently you have to have authorization and you have to pay for it before you get to Aruba. And so I didn't know at all, even after reading over the information. So I did have one letdown. I rebooked Aruba actually, so I'm going next week. So,
of course.
You can deny me once, but you can't deny me twice. But as far as Americans traveling into Mexico, it's been a cakewalk, like literally. Like Customs don't ask you any questions. They don't even ask. You do sign off a COVID checklist or like a questionnaire in relation to your symptoms. But that's it. Customs agents, they don't ask you anything. You just walk right on through and just say, hey, Mexico, what's up?
So funny. Yeah. I mean, it's been, and you can see it by the popularity and like, you know, how many people are there right now. Alex, you've traveled both domestically and internationally because you were in Seattle in the beginning, correct? With your family?
Yeah. So once I put my stuff in storage in Brooklyn, I went to Seattle. And then for me, when at the beginning of COVID, it was Montserrat, Antigua. Then I was like, my 30th birthday was happening. I'm like, there ain't no fucking way I'm staying in the States for my birthday. Like, no. Say what you want about me. I'm like, this is 30. I'm not staying with everything happening, politics. I'm like, I need a break. Like, I'm not doing this. So originally I looked at Puerto Rico because my birthday is at the beginning of August. So Puerto Rico was pretty good. I mean, it's part of the US. But then literally when I decided 2 days later, the governor here was like, shut it down because they had started opening like the Bahamas and whatnot. And all these tourists were coming in and they started seeing cases spike. So the governor here was like, oh no. He was like, beaches are closed, all that's closed. And I'm like, I'm not going to go to an island where I can't even just go on the beach. And I'm cool with social distancing. Like everything that I do in New York, like shout out to New York. We've done an amazing job getting everything under the control, being the largest city. There's literally no sense of entitlement. It's really a camaraderie. So it's just like, I'm going to do what I do in New York anywhere else. So what are we talking about? And so that was out of it. And then I was like, let me look at some other places. Dominican Republic came up. And I was like, okay, we'll go to DR. And they had just gone into their own, right when I got there, they had gone into their own, or maybe 2 weeks in, state of emergency because they had a similar thing, open borders, saw spikes go up. But what I looked at was, I like the data. So I'm like, where are the cases at? So in DR, over 80% of the cases were Santo Domingo because that's their capital. So I was like, what are some other places? Punta Cana is, I mean, a beautiful place I've always wanted to go, but they had maybe 4,000 cases and like 4 deaths, even though they saw a slight spike. So I felt safer going there and I knew I could spread out more. So I booked it there. When we got there though, they did have it at the airports. They, unlike, you know, some of these other places we were looking at that were saying you're going to have COVID tests to come. Like, I believe Puerto Rico is one of those places you had to have the results or whatnot. And then I was like, okay, I don't have it. DR actually on the spot did COVID tests. So they pricked your finger. Like you could not even get through customs. This is how safe it was. And like, I applaud them and why I am just still so disgusted by the US because I'm like, these places have literally less resources than us, but you got to DR and you could not get through that airport without getting through the COVID testing process. All their people were masked up. They made sure everyone had mask on. They pricked your finger. You got your rapid COVID test results back. And that actually made me feel more comfortable because I'm like, I've been quarantined for a minute. And so I knew I wasn't going to, but it also made me feel good to know that peace of mind. I had the test done now and that I knew that they weren't going to let anybody in that had it. So it made me enjoy the trip even more, but also take more precautions about social distancing. Cause it's just like, you know what, if they're doing all of this, I want to be a part of that effort. We had a dope Airbnb. So for me, it was really just the people we were with. We all got tested. We were all negative. We stayed with each other in our Airbnb. You could go to the beaches, but they had a curfew, 7 p.m. on the weekdays, 5 p.m. on weekends. So you had to get everything done before. But honestly, like if you're going to travel during this time, I think the way you need to reshift and think about it is like, go there with the idea of spending quality time with the people you're with or even with yourself, because it's not about going out and like, at least for me, it wasn't about going out and like turning up at a club or whatever. I'm like, I'm going to go to a restaurant here and there and we had to book reservations, but honestly, I'm not out here to, kiki and like get turned up and meet a new bae. It's really about, I'm trying to be in a different environment so I can get work done, have peace of mind. And then that's what brought me to Puerto Rico after, because we have friends in New York that are like, hey, we've been quarantined for a minute. When it starts getting cold here, we're not about this life. So I'm here to look at properties. And so now I'm sold and I'm like, I'm not about to be anywhere but here for the winter.
Yeah, I hear you. So Cassie, and there's questions coming in. I'm definitely going to get to you guys. Anybody who has questions, drop them in the comments. I will definitely make sure that we get them in. And this kind of goes into it. I think of all the people that have done travel right now, yours has been the most intricate by far. And so my question for you is it's the extension of the same question. What did the research look like for you all while you were, doing the camper trip? Somebody, asked that. You have some people who have actually seen the camper trip that are commenting here. What did your research period look like, especially because you were doing such road trips through multiple countries?
It was honestly, I can't lie, trial and error. Like we would go to I mainly used government websites. So whatever I didn't listen to news sites or blogs or anything like that, because that information generally was inaccurate. Like one website will say Greece is open to American tourists, and you'll go on Greece's website and it's like no information like that. So the main thing I did was search for the government travel site for every country. So starting with Croatia, I looked at Croatia's government travel site, and the information was so conflicting. I remember the night before leaving, not even being sure if I was going to be allowed into the country or not. And I was just like, you know what? F it. I'm going to wing it and we'll see what happens. Because the information was saying that only people from the UK and European Union are allowed into the country. But the thing is, if you have been in a country for 14 days, technically you've been in that country long enough to be allowed into any country that's allowing them into there. So I had been in London for 2 weeks at the time. So even though they weren't allowing Canadians in technically, I had been in London, who is allowed into Croatia. So I took a chance and I was like, you know what? We'll see what happens. Flew there and I was sweating bullets in the line. Like this American lady was standing in front of me and she was like, hysteric, because she turned around to me and she's like, oh my gosh, I'm so nervous. Like, I don't know if they're going to let us in. Like, are you American? And I'm like, no, I'm Canadian. I don't really know if we're on the same. Like,
sorry, sis, I'm good.
You're not the same.
I'm sorry, but I can't relate. And she's like, I don't know. This lady, she's like, this lady looks like really, really mean. So maybe you should go to the different line. So I'm like looking at my boyfriend, like maybe we should switch lines too, because I'm nervous now too. And while she was in line, she's like pulling out all these records to prove that she lives in London and that this and that. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to get through now because I'm not even sure if I'm allowed to get in. So you just have to fill out this form online, send it to Croatia, and they have the information. I literally went to the line, gave him my passport. While I'm sweating buckets, I'm looking at him like, you need anything else? He just scanned it and let me in, and that was it. So I don't know if it was because I was already in London or because nothing on the website said that Canadians are technically allowed in. So that's what that's what I've been telling everybody. Since London allows everybody in, if you do want to travel, to me, it makes sense to go to somewhere like that, quarantine for 14 days if you have the freedom to do that. And then since you're traveling from somewhere that's allowed into those countries, you can travel through Europe from London, because they don't look at where your passport is from. They look at where you're traveling from for most of the countries.
I thought Croatia allowed Americans though.
Yeah, but it's not a part of the EU.
Not at the time that I was traveling, they didn't.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. I saw an article saying that Croatia's allowing Americans in, but I haven't seen any factual information that says that. That's the only thing.
Croatia's been open. I know Americans and have seen Americans that have gotten in.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the same thing was with Italy. When I went to Italy, there was an American on the flight. And I know that Italy was close to Americans at the time. And I was like, hey, how are you allowed in here right now? And he was like, why? He's like, he lives in Europe. So even though he has an American passport, because he's traveling from other European places, he's been allowed to travel around freely and he's had no problem. It was a black guy on the flight. So that's why I say like it matters more so where you're traveling from than actually what your passport is. So that's something to consider. And so yeah, that's basically what the research looked like. Just researching what the government site said, going there, asking questions, also talking to other Americans because I wanted to know how other Americans were getting in there because anywhere I went, I did see Americans as well. And the main story that I was hearing was that they had already been in Europe during that time, and
I
that's
can't
travel
that much
through.
in Europe.
What did you say, Fed?
I can't afford to spend 14 days in Europe before I started.
No, actually, let's get more detailed than that. 14 days in the United Kingdom with the Great British Pound. Like, it's not even the euro. Like, it's the pound. I go to London and I'm like, I still don't understand why stuff is so expensive here. I don't get it.
Crazy expensive. It's crazy expensive. But yeah, so, and with the van, that was like we had partnered with the company to get that one. So that was very easy and straightforward. They came, dropped it off for us. And somebody asked if all of us did a COVID test before we left. No, because all of us had been quarantining before we traveled. So none of us had really been moving around or anything. We just been staying put in our homes. And we also knew each other, knew we hadn't been interacting with other people, so knew we'd be safe traveling with each other. And I think the camper van was a really dope idea, especially how early we were traveling because we had minimal contact with other people. We had everything we needed in the van, and anywhere we went was empty. Like Croatia was empty. Italy was emptier than it normally is. Like I had the Venice canal to myself. Greece was the busiest, I would say. But at the time, I felt like Greece had done a really good job managing COVID because basically with Greece, you have to fill out a form online and it creates a QR code that gets scanned when you get to the airport. And the QR code will tell them whether you need to get tested for COVID or not. They have COVID testing centers right at the airport. I have it highlighted in my stories if anybody wants to see it. But what determines whether you get tested or not, I think, is your passport with them because me and my boyfriend were both coming from the same place. He has a British passport and I have a Canadian passport. He had to get tested and I didn't. And at the time, the UK cases were really high and Canada's done a great job, shout out to Canada, of managing COVID. So our cases were low and I didn't have to get tested. So that's how they were handling it. And if you do have if you do test positive, they have all your hotel information like in the QR code. So they would contact you to let you know that you need to quarantine and not self-isolate for the time being. And if you don't test positive, you get no contact or anything. And
that's a fear though. That's a lot of fear that they get that they test positive in a country and they have to 14-day quarantine. And they have to take time away from work.
Right.
Well, I think that's where it becomes like the cool thing here for like, let's say other passports, and that keeps coming up is the fact that if you don't have a US passport, like I feel like you are in the best situation right now. And in the world,
it's risky.
Here is like, for example, like that moment you felt like that American woman that was freaking out. I hadn't felt that until I got to DR. And I was waiting there to get my results back, even though I was like, I quarantined, I'd done everything. Like I wear my mask everywhere. I sanitized the crap out of everything. But it was just like, well, what if? Because a third of people are asymptomatic. So it's like, what's going to happen? And I remember when the woman, this literally happened at DR. They kept going up to people to give them their results and say, oh, you're fine. And they would walk out. I remember she called my name and she had me walk to her. And I was like, oh, shit. And I'm like, oh my God,
this shit is like the new STD test. This shit is the worst. It's the worst, yo.
And I'm like, oh shit, man. I'm the first person to arrive out of my group and it's my birthday. And I'm like, shit, if I'm the one quarantined. Then she gives me and she was like, oh yeah, negative. And I'm like, bitch.
You have me walk over here.
Literally like this. Oh my God. I think the scariest thing is like, I think the worst is going to be for places that have really high rates. The US, unfortunately, is we will be blackballed from most places for a while.
America to get it together.
But this is the thing. Okay. I have so many questions that are coming here. And one that Maurice just put in the comments, I'm going to pop up here in a second because this is a part of it. And I have a little bit of like internal intel on this question. So what are your like personal testing protocols right now? If you don't mind sharing. Like I have not gone anywhere and I got an antibody test. And I feel like anytime I go to get a type of blood work done, I'm probably just gonna be like, just throw that antibody, just throw it in there for good measure to see what it is. Considering you have been out and traveling, how many times have you been tested? Do you have like your own kind of like groove with it now where it's like after a trip, before a trip? What does that look like? Said, I'm gonna start with you on that one.
Well, I only got tested once, and that's after I got back from Tulum.
Okay.
Because I was experiencing symptoms. But if I wasn't experiencing symptoms, I wouldn't voluntarily go get tested. My results was negative when I got tested that time. But if I'm not experiencing symptoms, I'm not gonna go get tested unless like my job sends me. Like sometimes they want to know, just because I work with the federal government, a lot of times they will ask if I've been out the country recently or something like that. Mm-hmm. And it was send testing. They haven't yet, just because I work in a hospital. But for the most part, if you're not experiencing symptoms, they don't even recommend you go and get tested.
Okay. Meanwhile, I'm one of the more like paranoid people walking around the earth. I'm like, just take it. Like, let me go. I'm like, let me just see, maybe like there's people that are questionable. I haven't gotten the actual test done with the nose swab, but I found out that my pharmacy does do them with that 72-hour turnaround. So I'm considering it. But like I said, I get blood work. I'm like, just get the antibody. Like my antibody test came back negative when I got that done. And that was in June, like the end of June. And like I said, I haven't traveled. Cassie, do you have a flow? What's your testing situation look like?
So I haven't been tested at all. I wanted to get tested this week only because I want to see my niece. I just had a new niece and I don't want to wait the 14 days. So I was thinking that it's free to get tested here. So I was thinking I might just go get a test. And if I'm clear, I can just go see her earlier.
Right.
But prior to this, I literally just quarantined for 14 days between every trip. Every time I get back to whether it's London or Canada, coming back to, I stay home for 14 days. I live with somebody else. And that's why I didn't go home, because she has a son. And I just don't want to, I don't even want to take the risk. So I literally will come back home, come to my sister's house, and I just quarantine in her room. And
that's it. Yeah, Got it.
And then I go about my business.
Alex, what's your process been like?
It's similar. It's like I quarantine wherever I'm at. So if I'm back home with family, I'm not going to put anyone at risk. So I'm going to stay put. So when I got back from DR, I stayed put. Then literally 14 days later, it was like, oh, Puerto Rico. So I was like, cool, let's go. I don't feel anything. They have this thing when you get to Puerto Rico, you have to fill out all this stuff. And there's a Sarah alert system.
Okay.
But basically they put you on it now. I think after they had a little bit of a spike, now they have this where if you're here, they send you a text every day that says, do you have these symptoms? And you have to reply yes or no. So that's
efficiency is what it's called. And we can't get it together here on the mainland of America.
It's sad. It's really sad. It actually, I think the thing that made me really sad, and it sunk in how much we really ain't shit in the States, is when I came back from DR, they did all of this stuff when it comes to doing your COVID test, making sure they had curfew. They shut it down. They're like, we're not playing, and everybody abided. There was no sense of entitlement because they're like, I think there's a sense of camaraderie on islands or in other places that we're not experiencing right now.
Yeah, we're a very singular type of
one-minded. So even in Puerto Rico, going to a restaurant, you can't get in without them taking your temperature and then hand sanitizing and all that. But I came back to the U.S. and just going through the airports, the difference of going from DR to the U.S., they didn't take temperatures. Right. They didn't do nothing. And it was just like, this is so sad. We're the most powerful country in the world with the most resources, and we really don't care about our citizens. And that just made me so sad.
That's great. I forgot to mention too, that just reminded me with Canada, it's the same thing here. Once you land, I got an email from the government of Canada reminding me to quarantine. I got a phone call from them. They questioned me and asked me like where I'm staying, who's getting me my food, who else is in my house, like, am I exposed to anybody else? And they just kept reminding me until the 14 days was over, literally. Yeah.
You guys know those, the like if there's an alert, like an amber
like
alert or like a storm's coming, Puerto Rico every day before curfew, they send one of those alerts saying in 2 hours it's curfew, shut it down. Like,
right.
I'm like, cool with that.
It's other countries. We have Nomadis members that obviously live around the world. And I'll never forget the story that was shared with one of our members who actually is a teacher in South Korea. And they literally have an app tracker that they use for people. And you have to submit your temperature there twice a day. During your quarantine, I think even afterwards, because she's a teacher, and they have like a tracker, and literally there are not roadblocks, but there are these barriers of entry in different areas that you have to go through where your app and your temperature and what they take, like it'll give you like a green, you'll get a green symbol or like a red symbol or another color symbol, depending on like what your risk factor is and if you're good to go. And you have to show your app on your phone with your reading of what color it is to get access to certain places with how they shut it down. There's been so much quick innovation and quick efficiency that other countries have brought to the table that that I really wish we could get together. I want to talk to Maurice's question, because this is something that I can speak to a little bit from conversations I've had with tourism agencies. But Maurice is asking, do you think that more countries will do state-based entry for U.S. citizens? I think Costa Rica is opening up to some Americans from certain states. So literally 2 days before Costa Rica announced this in the press, I had actually spoken to somebody that works at Costa Rica's tourism board. And also I'm working with one of their ad agencies that they use for travel marketing, right? Doing my Audacity Digi work. And so we want to do some stuff with Costa Rica, and it kept popping up for me, even on a personal level. It's a place I want to go to. And it was on one of these phone calls that it was opened up to me that they were like, hey, they're going to be announcing soon that they're going to be allowing Americans in, but it's going to be a state by state mandate, and it's going to be your driver's license in particular that is going to grant you access to these places. So I was like, who's on the list? And I was like, it's got to be New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, because we are 3 states. I'm originally a New Yorker. Alex did in Brooklyn, and Connecticut, and I'm in Jersey now. And so it's like literally all of our governors got together and formed this triad in the tri-state area. And so what was happening, so that people couldn't just state shop really for whatever regulations they wanted, it was New York, New Jersey, Connecticut really just like shut it down, got it under control. We went from the most to some of the best numbers in the entire country. And so we have this pass to be able to go in with regulations into Costa Rica. So I'm interested in what you've seen abroad and just what you've heard in the industry. Do you think that it's a dual question that I'm going to ask? Do you think that that's going to become more prevalent in some of these countries? And 2, if you're not sure if you think it is, do you think it should, from what you've observed abroad? Yeah.
Well, I think, Aruba is doing the same thing, because you have, sort of like the same thing, because if you're from a certain state, you have to be tested before you get there. And of course, I'm from Georgia, so that's on the list. But I think it's only going to push people to get a license in a different state, like myself.
Is that easy to do?
Yes.
Is it?
Yeah, it is. Like,
I didn't know that.
Other states,
you have an address,
and you can just take it to the DMV and get you a license in that state.
Why can't we just act right, yo? Why can't we just act right?
Out the bag, you just wrecked habit.
Like, fuck! Like, we're never gonna get out of this.
Right? I still have a South Carolina license. Anyway.
My license is still New York, to be honest with you. So
most young people, they never really change their license over, especially if taxes are cheap. Let me stop telling everything.
Yeah.
stress. Yes, you can pay the taxes for your car and all of that. But anyway,
Right.
but I think
Yeah.
it's going to force people to license in other states just so they can travel.
So for me, what I think it's going to force people to do is I think it's going to force governors to get their shit together, because what's going to happen is you're going to have this nationwide case of FOMO. And it's going to be something where they're going to finally start catching heat from their citizens to make them get it together, lock it down, do whatever the hell needs to be done so that they're not left out from this. But I'm interested, Cassie, from what you've seen, do you think that this is a viable option? Do you think that it should be a viable option? What's your thoughts on that?
I think whether or not it's a viable option, I'm not sure. I think it should be, because like anywhere I've traveled to, all of the local shop owners or tour operators are suffering like a lot. Like that's a common theme. Like they're just like, I'm really sad. Like I really hope this corona goes away soon. Like I remember I went to Greece to actually get preparation for a villa for one of our group trips. And I was talking to the villa manager, and he hasn't had any bookings this entire year. We were like his only booking left for the year. So he was really like, I'm hoping nobody could travel to Greece. So it's, that's the thing. So he was like, I'm really hoping things stay this change. We're really hoping things open up because we're suffering here. Tourism is taking a big hit since only like locals can travel to where they're going. A lot of these shops are having to close down. A lot of these tour operators are having to close down because there isn't the influx of American travelers. So I think obviously safety first. Like you don't want people being put at risk because of tourism hit. But I think that it would be beneficial for sure to allow the states that have done the work to bring their numbers down into countries so that they can bring their tourism back up, because Americans do make up for a lot of the tourist dollars around the world. So any country is going to take the hit right now because of it.
Yeah, definitely. Alex, what are you thinking from also the American perspective? Do you think that it should be done state by state?
Yeah, absolutely. When I look at states like Texas, Arizona, Florida, quite frankly, like this whole thing, what did Missy Elliott say recently? She's like, privilege is when you don't care about something because it hasn't affected you yet or it doesn't affect you. And I think a lot of those states, not everybody, obviously, but a lot of those states took that, their governors, their leadership, because they were getting a lot of heat from their citizens. Texas in particular, historically, is one of those states that is known for suing the federal government for infringing on their rights. Wow. That's why it's a huge gun state and whatever. So yeah. I think at the end of the day, it's just like you need to live with those choices, because you guys would much rather put your own sense of FOMO or whatever before those of other people because it hasn't hit you yet. But that's why science actually exists. So I believe that needs to happen so those states can get under control. Florida is in a predicament right now that, I mean, it's outpacing countries. So absolutely, Florida is in a awful, like they are higher than, I think they are like the second highest out of any country. That's a state.
Look, we all know that we need to, for other reasons, we may just need to let Florida go.
Yeah, we gotta
we may just need to let Florida do its thing. Okay.
Right on there. So it's just, I think at the end of the day, it's like, I think there needs to be consequences for a thing. And also it's more about, it's the health and the safety of all of us. So they need to contain it within those places to make sure those people are okay and that we're okay here, because it's not okay for the US because we've done a really bad job to go and take that somewhere else. So based on the country or the states that have done it right, like I'm, again, super proud of New York, tri-state area. Like we had we had a third of cases, and the way that we acted, like we have the most people. And everybody in New York was just like, this is so much bigger than us. So I believe that needs to happen. I'm already seeing it in certain places where they have a list of here's the states that need to get tested if they're coming in here. And I'm a full supporter of it.
Yeah, I am too. I really hope they keep going with the state initiative. And like I said, I hope it puts a fire underneath a lot of these politicians to like do what they need to do. what do your safety protocols look like when you're abroad? What things have you put in place? Social distancing, masks, like what do you partake in? What did that look like for you while you were traveling?
Well, I'm used to wearing my mask because I have to wear it at work, and here it's not required to wear a mask in the grocery store, and other places, but I do. I wear a mask here while I'm in Atlanta, so it's not new to me. So I'll wear a mask. Getting off the plane to my hotel, I wear a mask. And most of the restaurants I've been to in Cabo and Tulum, they test you at the door. They require that you put on hand sanitizer, and I felt more comfortable doing that. I've been more congested in a place of people on the plane. Both of those places, because when I got off, I got a rental car. I wasn't in and out of taxis. I got a rental car, and I made sure Hertz cleaned the car.
Yeah,
and they will also clean it in front of you if you ask them to. So I felt safer doing that. And while on the beach, I social distance myself from everyone, basically everywhere I went. So I felt more comfortable being out of the country, following those procedures.
right. Alex, what is your safety procedures? What has it looked like for you as you've been out and about, especially, and talk about flying too, like on the plane?
Yeah. So, I actually saw something CNN put out the other day where they gave you a breakdown statistically of your likelihood of getting COVID on the plane. And it was actually really surprising. It was saying it's not as high as you think it would be, as long as they're doing what they should be doing. So they show that like your likelihood of getting COVID on a plane is like 1 in 4,000. And it becomes 1 in 7,000 as long as that middle seat is open. So guys, I've been on like Alaska, American, Delta, and JetBlue. So far, Delta is the best. The best. They do not, like that middle seat is not, no one's in between. American is all about that profit. And you can tell he's all up in there. Where I got on an American flight and I was kind of feeling anxious. Like I even put on the gloves in my purse because I'm just like, you guys care more about, and I get it, you're probably hurting, but I now feel uncomfortable on this flight because this person's up next to me when we're not being able to distance. But thank God, like I've been tested and stuff like that, so I don't have it. So I would say on the planes, it was really about always keeping your mask on. That's what really lessons it. Everybody I saw on all the planes kept it on. They abided by that unless you're like eating, but for the most part, they're not serving food really. And they're not really doing it at a lot of airports. It's really limited too. So that, and then when I get to my location, I like been most places with beaches. So similar to what Seth was just saying, that I am at the beach and I distance from other people. Most places I go, you go to the restaurant. Like right before this in Puerto Rico, I met my brother-in-law and sister, and they like in the restaurant separate everybody. Like we had to wait an hour the other day to get into a place because they were like not at capacity, but they were like, we don't have enough space and distancing between you guys. So outside of what they're already doing in a lot of these other places, that unfortunately that's not happening everywhere in the States. I wear my mask everywhere. I sanitize. I keep sanitizer in my purse. And I try to stay distance when I'm in a line or even at the airport. I'm making sure that I'm not up on people because I'm like, we're all getting to the same place. So it's really, I take everything I'm already doing in general and just apply it in other places.
Right. Cassie, what about you and your experience? And you've done a lot of car travel. What have you run into? Like, what's the real about what you've run into?
Well, similar to what Alex mentioned, everything that she's done, same type of stuff. In addition, for me, it also depends on where I'm traveling to. For one, I just generally have been avoiding anywhere that I know a lot of people are going to.
Right.
That's like a no for me. I remember when Seth went to Tulum, I was like, oh, I want to go to Tulum now. And then the next month it was like influx. And I'm like, oh, never mind. So whether it's a country or whether it's like an area in the country that I'm visiting that has too many people, I'm just like avoiding any places with large amounts of people that I can't social distance. So that's the first thing. Wearing my mask if I do have to be around people, of course. And also asking like establishments, what are they doing to make sure that they're keeping people safe? Like whether it's a hotel, the restaurant I'm at, if I'm renting a car, what are your procedures to make sure people are feeling safe? If I'm at a hotel, I watch the people clean every day because they do daily cleaning. So I'm like watching them to make sure they're doing it properly. If I see anything like that makes me uneasy, especially at restaurants, I'm not eating there. Like I remember being in Greece. And we went to this like Savlaki place, however you say it, I can't remember. Yes. And we ordered fries, and the girl literally took her bare hand, and touched the fries to see if they were hot or cold. And I was like, excuse me, you did fries with your hand? And she was like, yeah, her hands are clean. She washed her hands. I'm like,
no,
no. We're not going to eat here anymore. And the owner was so upset because visibly he wasn't getting a lot of service. And I was like, I understand why, but we just took our and left. I didn't want any of the food or anything from there. So if I see anything like remotely suspect, I'm just like, nah, I'm canceling it. So just being extra cautious, really and truly. Generally, I avoid places with a lot of people, whether it's a country or in the country. I'm not going to crowded places. I'm wearing my mask if I have to be around people. I'm asking questions, and I'm observing and for myself to make sure I feel comfortable with wherever I'm going. And just being extra vigilant, extra cautious.
Yeah. Alex brought up feeling uneasy on one of the flights that she took. Are there any other circumstances where you felt uneasy?
That's what I forgot to mention. Sorry. It's interesting that American carriers I found that like North American carriers are doing a better job with the spacing than Europe. With Europe, none of the airlines are keeping the middle seat empty.
Well, because you guys aren't as problematic.
True, because it was literally only on a Canadian airline that I experienced the empty middle seat. And I think KLM was doing it in the beginning, but their flights have been generally pretty empty since I've been on them. And KLM is my favorite airline anyways, and they do generally a good job, but they're serving food now. Like they're actually going down the aisle with the cart and giving, not like necessarily like, what do you want from the menu, but like a boxed food, and they're serving drinks again on the airlines in Europe. Whereas in the beginning, they were just like tossing a bag of snacks at you at the beginning of the flight, and that was all you were getting for the entire flight. So that's interesting that like, I feel like North America might be doing a little better job in terms of their airline safety than Europe is what I found.
Got it. Said, what was a circumstance in which you felt uneasy?
Oh, with Americans. So the fares
of course.
on American Airlines. So the fares are higher on Delta. Yeah, because like
but it's worth it.
So if you have the money to put towards the flight, you will probably feel a lot safer. But if not, I mean, for those who want a cheaper flight and want to risk it all, you have to do American Airlines, which is not fair, but that's just how things are.
Right. It's interesting that you all brought up as a moment of uneasiness being during the flying process. Did anybody feel uneasy like on land that had to do with lodging, that had to do with like maybe a restaurant? Well, we heard your story, but like an atmosphere type of situation, or was it really just around the flying?
I think for me, the only place I felt uneasy was Italy because of all the like, everybody saw how intense their lockdown was. It was all and how high their cases were. And I remember a lot of people asking me like, aren't you nervous about going to Italy? And honestly, at the time I was just like, I've been traveling so much. So I feel like as long as I'm vigilant and I do my own work to be precautious, like I'm fine. But their night life was so crowded. It was crazy. Like it was like COVID didn't even exist. Like I felt like because they had been locked down so intensely, they were just like, wow, we're allowed back out again. Let's just go all out. So like the streets were just crowded. And I was like, I think I might just have to stay inside at nighttime because this looks a little bit risky. So that was like really the only place I felt like there was not enough precautions being taken.
Right.
Yeah.
Anybody else outside of the flight?
Yeah, the only time recently was here in Puerto Rico, but we still had 6 feet. I think it was just a shock for me because it was the only, like a couple days or nights ago, we went to dinner and it was this really nice place in San Juan. And I guess they're known for having like, I didn't know what it was, but they were like, oh, all these like famous people come here or whatnot. So they're like, they can kind of get away with more murder because they pay people off or whatever. But I felt uneasy because of most places are operating at 25% capacity. So I'm used to seeing that, whereas they were operating probably at 60. There was still space between us. But I think because I'm like, wow, there's a lot of people. So if I would have gone, when I went to the bathroom, like the only time I had my mask off was when I was eating. And then when I went to the bathroom, kept it on. When we walked out, I kept it on. That was the only time I really felt uneasy, but I was like, checked in with myself. I'm like, okay, there was space. But that made me uneasy because I'm like, I hadn't been in a vicinity where it's that poppin' in a while. But I think the other thing was that when you walk along the streets of PR right now, it is, I mean, people are doing everything. Like when you jog, like I jogged the other day and I basically did what the people here do. Like people are jogging with masks on. Like I was sweating more than I usually do, but I'm like, I'm going to do my part. So I think even though I felt a little uneasy, I checked in. I was like, you know what? I feel comfortable still because people here have really been doing their job.
Right. Said, and you, any contribution?
I felt better. I knew that if I can get outside of the airport, I would be okay. Because I like the social distance anyway. So call me the social distance traveler. I don't even like being around a lot of people. And not being able to go to the clubs on vacation, that did not bother me at all because I really don't go to the clubs that much while I'm on a trip. But most of the restaurants were, they had outdoor patio seating, like every restaurant I ate at. So I felt comfortable with that. But I was socially distancing myself from everyone. If you look at my highlights, you can see most of the time I didn't have on a mask, but I was rarely inside of a building also. So most of the time I was bike, and I'm not about to ride a bike with a mask on or run.
Right.
I've had that experience before, and it's not cool. Even though you can run with the mask on, it'll be much harder to breathe.
Yeah, I run almost like every other day. And so what I do is I have a mask, but I keep it down here when I'm running. And I mean, running, you can actively avoid folks.
Yes.
So it won't be on, it'll be around my neck. And if I have to pass somebody or a group of people, whatever, that's when I put it up. I put it on about a half a block before I hit them. And I keep it on for about half a block after I go past them. And then I take it back off again.
Okay. That makes sense.
That's what I do for running. And I run all the time.
I don't run, so I don't have that.
She's just like, all you said. So I want to wrap this up. This amazing discussion. Thank you all for being here. Said you brought up your highlights, and my last question is wrapped around social media, right? Do you think that it is safe or right or all of those things to be posting about your travels right now during a pandemic on social media? What effect do you think that has? And have you caught shit for it? Because I wouldn't be surprised if there's some people that slid in folks' DMs like, excuse me. So I'm interested in your view on that. I want to start with you, Sad.
Well, probably. I think I might have had one person, but many people don't come in my DMs because they know how I am.
Yeah, you're a wild one.
I would let you have it. So I don't care who you are. I don't provide recommendations. A lot of people ask me about recommendations of places to travel to, and I'm for it with everyone. And I let them know that during COVID, I don't provide recommendations just because I don't want to be responsible for whatever happens to someone COVID relating if they travel to that place. I do promote travel. My page is a travel page. So I do promote traveling. I try to be very specific with the words I use. I don't really promote traveling during COVID technically, but I still promote travel. So I try to be wiser with my delivery right now, just because it's potentially not safe for everyone to travel just because of what's going on. So I try to be careful with that. So um, even right now, while some places are opening up, other places are not open yet. People still should be careful and cautious about traveling right now. That's my suggestion to anyone interested in traveling.
Dope, dope. Cassie, I think that you're in the same boat, being a forward-facing content creator in the travel space. So what's your feelings on this?
For me, I think that like said, like it's a travel page. So if you're coming to a travel page, you're going to get information about travel, whether that's regular times or how to navigate travel safely, how we're navigating travel the best way we can in the state that we're in. So for me, the information that I provide is literally information.
Mm-hmm.
Do with that what you will and what you can. I'm here to show you when I travel here, this is the state, this is what you to expect. This is what what I'm doing to keep myself safe. This is how it looks like right now. Because at the end of the day, people are going to be looking for somewhere to understand what travel is going to look like post-COVID, what they can expect when they start to travel too. So I think it's important to have people who are at the forefront of that and who are willing to do that, so that people have like a point of reference. Not to say that we're the example, like said. So if you're following after us, please don't like take it as this is what you should do, but take that information so that you can make an informed decision based off of what you're seeing. So I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to share that information. I think it's important to do that, especially if you are doing it.
Right.
I haven't got any flack from it personally. I've seen other people, but people don't usually get at me like to my face. I think I present as a very like sweet and kind person. So people are generally really nice to me in my DMs and to my face. So if they have a problem with it, they're talking about it with their friends, not to me. So
right, understood. Alex, with you, what are your thoughts behind this?
I mean, I haven't had any flack. I think a lot of it is the people in my experience that I've seen, not personally to me, but have, let's say, expressed, disdain towards people traveling during COVID on Facebook. And it's not directed at me or any social platform. These are people that haven't traveled yet. And this is actually really interesting because my sister-in-law, before she came to DR for my birthday, she had a moment with my brother. She was scared. She was like freaking out because they hadn't traveled in the entire time. And mind you, up until that point, I had been on 8 flights prior to that and had traveled. So I was fine. And I totally got it. When I booked that place, I was like, I know it went from originally 8 people and it dwindled down because there were some people that caught COVID, husband or wife caught COVID, and they're like, I'm not putting you on risk. And I'm like, I appreciate that. I'm willing to lose this investment. That's fine. But she got scared because I'm like, there's people that just don't know. And until you do it yourself, you are going to only, I think something Cassie brought up earlier was like, I don't look at the news, like because of what they're saying. And I went to all the websites. I looked at CDC regulations. Mind you, when you go to these websites, they're like, don't travel.
Right.
When I got there feeling safer because of the protocols that were put in other places other than the US, I was like, yep, that's the move. So quite honestly, no one said anything. And also what I try to do is when I'm taking, and mostly it's for myself, but when I'm taking any videos, people see that there's no one around me. Like some of their experience said, like I would go to beaches like DR and Punta Cana. The entire beach was ours.
Right.
Mind you, we're in Coney Island in Brooklyn trying to like find a nook.
Like, this is my spot, right? And so I think people saw that. And also I try to say things when I am traveling. So when I'm on the plane, I would say things like, here are the flights I've been on. And I would show people American Airlines. I'm like, we are literally packed in here. So if you are considering traveling, keep that in mind. So I think more people, when they see someone they know doing it, that maybe they respect and they're like, oh, I know you're responsible. I think that's what they're like, I feel at ease. But otherwise, I feel like most people that are out here judging traveling are ones that haven't done it. And I get it. It's a fear. But I think if you're doing it with precaution, I think it's just as safe as, staying and going to your local grocery store.
Absolutely.
Right. I appreciate it. You all dropped some gems. Thank you so much for taking the time with us tonight, regardless of where you are. For everybody who's tuned in, thank you so much. Also, feel free to share this live. Again, this is another one of our stats that we've been taking from the Nomadness Travel Diversity and Travel Consensus, which is our survey that we've been put together. And we're on our road to 5,000 people getting through this survey by September 1st. And it's our way of making sure that we are accurately represented and that we own our data in the travel industry. For those who don't know, there's only one data report that's ever been published, and we have already blown past by over 2,000 the sample size that they had with a lot of the data points that you hear about African-American travel specifically. And our data is actually talking about Black travelers around the world. So I'm super excited. The survey has been dropped. The link is in not only the caption of this video, but also in the comments a couple times. If you need it, you can also tag me, share it with your tried and true travel crew. If you are a traveler of color or in these groups of travelers of color, please, please, please help us out. And we are going to be pushing through September 1st and getting this out here. And at the end of this year, we will be releasing our data report. So love you guys. Everybody be safe. Take this information and make the best decision for you. That is really ultimately what this conversation was for. Let's not act like people aren't going out there. Let's not act like everybody has the ability to stay home and still keep it together. Some people do actually need to get out for various reasons. And so with that, I hope you have some nuggets and some points of view that are valuable to help your safety stay intact. Everybody on the call, thank you so much. I love you. Alex, we'll be in touch. Said, yes, Cassie, so good to see your face. You guys, please be well and be safe. And thank you for being a part of the live.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.